Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be a very long overdue September wrap-up video. Now it's currently the 9th of November and I've still not posted my September or my October wrap-up video. I was contemplating putting them into just one long video, but I read 18 books across September and October and I feel like that would just be a ridiculously long video. So I thought I would just do my September wrap up in one video and then I'll post my October wrap up like next week or something. I'll film it tomorrow and post it like a week after this one. So yeah, lots of wrap up videos to come. In September I read 8 books. I'm not going to include my stats from Storygraph because to be honest I don't find them that useful to me. I don't find them like super interesting because they're kind of the same every month. I definitely have a type when it comes to books. I like mystery thrillers, I like dark books, I like books that are around 300 to 400 pages, and that's kind of all that it ever says about me. Without further ado, let's just get onto the books. So I'm going to start with the non-fiction book I read, and that was This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. And this book is a non-fiction memoir written by someone who used to be a junior doctor and he's now, I think he's like a TV writer, and this book is basically his edited version of his diaries from when he was working as a junior doctor. So this book is a really eye-opening account of the pressures and the struggles that junior doctors face when they start working for the NHS system in England. It talks about the really low pay, the lack of having a social life, not being able to get holidays and leave, a lack of support from the services that are meant to help them, so if they're struggling with their mental well-being. The author manages to paint a really grim picture of the reality of being a junior doctor. It's just something that I never really thought about, and I just thought doctors were, you know, really well paid, and apparently they're not. Whilst it is quite a bleak outlook on life as a doctor, it manages to still be really light-hearted, it's really funny and it's full of humour, so it makes it really easy to read. It's definitely one that appeals to the masses, which I think is the point with this book, because I think its ultimate purpose is trying to shed a light on how dire of a situation the NHS is in, and I think that kind of book is really important for, you know, just everyday people to read, because I feel like a lot of what we know is about what's in the media and we don't really know the full realities of what's going on. So I feel like this was a really important book to read because it really did open my eyes. It's very thought-provoking. It does encourage you to want to make a change, and yeah, I just thought it was so good. I would recommend it for people like me who don't read a lot of non-fiction and need it to be sort of easy to read and very accessible and still like entertaining. And I did listen to this on audiobook as well, so I was listening to it when I was driving to work and things like that. Very easily digestible and I would highly recommend it. I am going to read, there's like a Christmas version of this book. I think he basically talks about some of the stories from when he was in hospital at Christmas, and I'm going to give that a go in December because I'm sure it'll be just as funny and just as bleak. It has actually shown me that I do like non-fiction, and I did actually read another non-fiction book in October, which I will talk about in my next video. I don't rate my non-fiction books because I say it as if I read them all the time. I feel like for me it's sort of weird to rate a non-fiction book because it's just non-fiction. I can't really rate it. I either like it or I don't like it. That's why it's first. The rest of these books will be in order from my least favourite to my most favourite. So my least favourite book that I read in September, which was a fiction book, was You Have to Make Your Own Fun Around Here by Macken, and I did also listen to this on audiobook just because I saw it was available at my library, and I don't even remember where I found this book. I just knew it was on my TBR somewhere, so, and it's quite a recent edition. This book is set in a small town in Ireland. It's a contemporary fiction story and it explores the realities of living in a small town, dreaming bigger and wanting to, you know, get out into the world, and being stuck in friendships that are quite toxic but are just the friends that you've always known, so that's just how it is. I did not like this book. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I liked how it talked about female friendships. I thought it dealt with that in a really relatable way, and it talked a lot about like jealousy and comparing yourself to your friends, and I thought it portrayed that really well. I also thought this book was kind of funny. It was teetering on a fine line between funny and just plain mean, because we're following our narrator Katie, who is friends with Evelyn and Evelyn's cousin Maeve, and they're like this little trio of friends. But Evelyn is clearly the leader, Katie just kind of follows along and does whatever she says, and they both pick on Maeve quite a lot. And while some of that was like kind of funny in a sick way, I just felt it was overwhelmingly mean. I know that that was the point probably because they are in a toxic friendship, but I feel like there was never any comeuppance for the people that were being mean. Even our narrator Katie had quite a mean streak to her, and I just found her kind of unlikable. I thought she was really snobbish towards the new friends that she makes throughout the book. I just didn't really root for her. She has all these big dreams and I just didn't even want her to achieve them, because I was like, I don't think you deserve it, you're quite a nasty person. I was interested in the story throughout, but I thought as it got to the end, I expected it to be a lot more explosive and have a lot more like confrontations and arguments in it, and actually deal with the problem of having these friends and walking away from them finally. But they're just, I don't know, it just felt a bit lackluster, and I just expected more from it. I also thought the ending was kind of weak, because there was also a side plot going on where this other girl in this town that they live in had disappeared, and there was no closure with that. There were some suggestions as to what might have happened, but it definitely wasn't clear enough to satisfy someone like me who likes a wrapped up ending. I also thought that the ending for Katie, our main character, was a little bit too convenient, and like I say, I didn't even really like her, so I kind of didn't want her to succeed. But that might be just me being petty. I still like enjoyed my time reading it, but when I finished it I was like, oh. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 overall, because there was nothing wrong with the writing or anything like that, I just wanted more from it. Next up I read The Only Child by Miranda Rijks. I'm not sure how to say that last name. This book holds a little special place to me because I got a NetGalley account a few months ago, and this is the first book that I ever got on NetGalley. If you don't know what that is, you can make an account and request a advanced reader's copy of a book. This one, it was like a pre-approval one. They just kind of accepted anyone. But it was still like the first book that I got for free before publication, so I thought it was really exciting. So this book drew me in because of the cover, and we're following this couple who are like the golden couple. They're called Stuart and Chantel, and everyone's kind of jealous of them because she is this hotshot divorce lawyer and he is the face of daytime TV, so they're about to be pretty famous. They've got this son called Alex who is a passionate environmentalist. Him being an environmentalist is not what they envision for him, especially the mom in the story, Chantel. She really hates that he's into all that. So there's friction between the family because of these like different opinions, and then Chantel starts getting these blackmail messages which she takes very seriously because she is actually holding on to this secret that is like integral to their family, and if anyone found out it would like destroy her career, destroy her husband's career, etc. At first I thought the writing was a little bit poor in this book, because right at the beginning Chantel was not a likeable character at all. It's told in first person and she's walking through her house, which is like this magnificent house, and she's talking about her house in great detail in first person, saying about like the rich colour of the floors and the exquisite paintings on the walls, and it was like sickening to read. That's just the kind of thing that gives me the ick. Right from the get-go I was like, God, you need to like warm me up to this character. She's our main character. You can't just go straight in with this like unlikable rich bitch. Don't get me wrong, I love books that follow those kind of characters, but you need to give me something for me to root for this character, you know? But this book quickly reeled me in. The plot was really fast paced and I ended up reading this book in like 2 sittings. It is a very addictive book and I did find it hard to put down. Although I did get into the book as it went on, I still felt that the dialogue was a little bit like repetitive or unnatural. It wasn't like the best written book I've ever read, but I was still like really engrossed in it, so it obviously did something good. At the end it got a bit messy because I felt like we were following more of certain characters when we needed to see the other characters more. Like we just kind of lost Chantel at the end. I feel like we needed to see more from her. I felt like some of the plot reveals I couldn't really place them in the narrative as to when they happened and like how they happened, because I was like, I've been reading from these characters the whole time, like when were they meant to have done this? And my other thought on this is that the final twist I think might be like not so well received. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's an issue going around that a lot of people have with mystery thrillers and explaining their endings using a certain trope, and with this one it just felt a bit like, I don't know, it felt like a bit of a cop-out, to be honest. I feel like all the negative thoughts I've had on this book have come the more I've thought about it. Like I initially gave this book a 4-star, but then like the more I've thought about it, because I read it in September, I've had a lot of time to think about it, I've realised there were little issues that kind of annoy me, so I put it down to a 3. I kept it at 3 because I still liked this book and I still enjoyed my time reading it. It's just not really one that I would recommend as like a great book. I think it's good if you want a really fast, like quick, fun read, but it's probably nothing more than that, to be honest. Next up, you all know that this woman is my queen, but unfortunately I didn't really like this book so much, and it is her new standalone, False Witness. Now I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 because I overall enjoyed it. However, For me, it is my least favourite standalone of hers, and it just didn't affect me as much as her other books have. So, this book is similar in premise to her other standalones. We're following this sibling relationship. They are estranged sisters. We've got Lee, who's a defence attorney, and her sister Callie, who is a drug addict, and they have a really dark past together, which it does go into at the very start of the book. So Callie seems to drop into Lee's life very sporadically, mainly when she needs something, but the two sisters must work together now because this guy has requested that Lee represents him in an upcoming rape trial against him. But Lee soon discovers that there is like an ulterior motive here with this guy, and that he is linked to this secret that Callie and Lee are sharing, and they don't want anyone to find out about it. Good things about this book: as always, I thought that the sibling relationship was really good. I really liked Callie, especially as a character. I thought she was really well developed, and I really loved how she portrayed Callie's drug addiction and how it affected both herself and her sister and like their relationship. I did prefer Callie much more than I liked reading from Lee's perspective, but that's fine. I mean, Lee was fine too. I thought that this book was much more character focused than I initially anticipated. The chapters were super long. When I was on my Kindle, it said like 45 minutes left for each chapter, which is like unheard of for a mystery thriller nowadays. I'm just like not used to that. And I feel like I wanted some more like thrills and some more twists to it. You sort of know right from the get-go who the bad guy is. It's more trying to work out their motivations. It seems more like a cat and mouse type situation than it is a whodunit. I much prefer a whodunit kind of situation, and yeah, this wasn't that. It might just be a personal preference thing, but I felt like some bits of it sort of dragged, but then it also was very tense and suspenseful in some parts too. It was still super emotional, but it just didn't hit me as much as her other books have. I cried at The Good Daughter and Pretty Girls, and I didn't cry at this one, even though there is like a really sad part of this book. Didn't get me. So this book was the first book that I read that has featured a COVID-19 backdrop to it. When I read the afterword in this book, I understood why she included it, and I really admire her for like politicizing COVID and raising certain issues about how it's been dealt with in prisons and things like that, and I do appreciate that she brought it up on that level. However, I found that a lot of it came across as a bit preachy. There was a lot of like slagging off people that had their masks like half on their face and that hadn't washed their hands, and like I get it, I do, but it just took me out of the story a bit. It just came across a little personal. It's not like I don't agree with what she's saying, it's just I didn't like it in this story. So yeah, overall I just thought it was a bit disappointing, to be honest. It was still really well written, but I just can't help but be a bit disappointed because it is like my least favourite of her standalones. I was hoping for a new favourite, but oh well. So we're now on to my 4-star or higher books. The first one I've got here is Leave the World Behind by Rumaan. Now I really enjoyed this book. I know it has some mixed reviews online. I think it's because you need to know what to expect when you go into it. I think it's been marketed a bit like a thriller book, and really is not a thriller. It is a pretty short book. It comes at just under like 250 pages, and it is more of a literary fiction book which is set during the apocalypse. I would really compare this to Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. It is very similar in tone, and it has that like quiet, eerie atmosphere, but it's talking about some really like scary things, but in a way that is like really subtle. It just provides like a backdrop to the story, but it doesn't focus on it like too much. So we're following this couple, Amanda and Clay, and they've gone on this trip with their 2 children to this like isolated bit of Long Island because they all live in New York City and they want to get away for a few days. So I think it's like the day after they first get there, they get this couple knocking on their door, and it's this older black couple who claim to own the property that they're staying in, and they say, can we please come and stay? I'm really sorry about this, but there's been a blackout in New York City. We don't know what's going on. Can we please stay here and just like wait it out? And then we begin this like tense kind of situation with these 2 families living in the same house. We don't know what's going on in the outside world, but there's no internet, there's no TV service, there's no phone service. They've no idea what's going on, but they've sort of got to trust each other and, you know, wait it out and see what happens. So one of my favourite things about this book was the atmosphere. It was written in a way that was like constantly tense and creepy, but I'm not entirely sure how or why. It just feels like there's an impending doom coming, but you never really know when. and it kind of never really happens. But I just really liked the whole feeling of this book. I thought it captured the fear of the unknown really well, and the confusion of not knowing what's happening and feeling lost without your phone and lost without the internet. There's something so terrifying about imagining if something was going on a worldwide scale that we just weren't really sure of, because I feel like we would get a push notification now just saying if something really horrible had happened, whereas with this book you just have no idea. I also really liked the narrative style of this book. It is told in a third person narrative, but it kind of jumps really quickly back and forth between different characters' heads. In the same like scene, it will just like rapidly go back and forth between a few different characters, and it also throws in a couple of like tidbits from the outside world that the characters don't know, which kind of helps the reader to understand a little bit about what's going on outside. Not enough to explain fully though. At first I did struggle with this book because the writing is really like overwritten. In the first like couple of pages I was like, can I even do this? Because I was googling about 10 to 15 words just in the first couple of pages. Like, I have no idea what that means. I cannot even work it out. But that feeling eased as I went through. I think maybe just the first like few pages are like super overwritten, and then it gets a little bit easier as you go through. And then towards the end I felt that I actually really liked how it was overwritten and just a bit like excessive. I think he's clearly a very talented writer, and that shows in this book. There is a part in this book where it describes this noise that the families hear, and it was genuinely one of the creepiest things I've ever read. There was something just so ominous about it and so terrifying. I could like imagine it just happening to me, and I was shit scared. Like, I don't know how he managed to bring it to life just with a few sentences. However, the reason I didn't give this one a 5 out of 5 is because the lack of answers in this book is very frustrating. It is a short book. I feel like I could have read so much more of it though. I mean, that is a good thing that I could have read it on, but it just ended a little bit too abruptly and without answers, and I just need some answers. There were like a few hints that you could work things out, but I just wanted a bit more. I just wanted a bit more explanation. But I feel like I kind of knew going into it that this was like a mysterious kind of book and I wasn't really going to get answers, so I wasn't like disappointed with it, but I feel like it could have been elevated with a bit more explanation is all. But I still really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend this book though if you want something that is kind of like dystopia, apocalyptic, but on a much more subtle scale. Don't expect any answers with this book because you ain't getting any. Next up, I read The Promise by Katerina Diamond. Now, this is a series that I've been reading for quite a long time, and in September I basically just picked it up again because I found it at the library. This is number 4 in a series that follows these 2 detectives. They've all been really good so far, and again I gave this one a 4 out of 5. This book was particularly good because we followed this other character. She often introduces new characters who you follow a perspective of alongside the detectives, and by the end of the book they're all like tied in together. And the character that she introduced in this book, who's called Connor, he was like my favourite character. I preferred him to the detectives. So I really loved seeing how these perspectives came together. I thought it was really clever and it was really well crafted. Although I did predict a little bit towards the end of what was going to happen and how they would connect, but it didn't affect my enjoyment of the book, and I still thought it was super clever. I wouldn't recommend you read just this book, but if you really like Karin Slaughter's writing, you like dark, gritty, like graphic series, if you like police procedural series that follow detectives' perspectives, it's set in England, which I always think is really fun. They're super binge worthy. I would recommend this series if that is what you're looking for. Next up is Rock Paper Scissors by Alice Feeney, and I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I recently read His and Hers by Alice Feeney and I thought that was so good, so I picked this one up straight away when I saw it. It was in Tesco for like £4, so how could I say no? So this book, we're following this couple called Adam and Amelia. They've won this like romantic getaway to the Scottish Highlands. They basically drive up for the weekend and there's a snowstorm. They find out that they're staying in this creepy abandoned chapel. Weird, unexplainable things start happening while they're there. And then it becomes clear that they are both lying to each other and that someone is watching them from the outside. This book had the best atmosphere. You really felt like you were in this abandoned, isolated setting. It felt super creepy. It felt a bit like paranormal or like ghostly. I just thought that the setting was really vividly described. The chapters in this book are super short and they often end on like a bombshell or some sort of reveal where you just have to keep on reading. It is like really hard to put down. The alternating chapters is super interesting as well because the second you finish one, you just want to get back to it. And the twist in this book was amazing. I was actually gobsmacked when I read this twist. I got to it and then I like read the page back and was like, oh my god, holy shit. Like, it was so clever and it was so well done, because once I knew what was happening, it seemed so obvious, and like all the clues completely led up to that, but it just was completely over my head and I would never have guessed that. The only slight issue I had with this book, which meant that it didn't get a 5-star, I felt that the ending was over a bit too quickly. Maybe that's because I was like super fast reading through it, but right at the end some of the action happens like off the page, and then we're all of a sudden at the final chapter, which was a little bit more like slower paced, and I thought it just kind of ended on like a bit of a down note. But I still thought the ending was really good and it felt like it was quite unique for a mystery thriller, but I'm just not sure that I loved the way that it was delivered or the way that it was written. Just that end part, like that was literally my only issue with this book. But I would still really recommend this book. I have read His and Hers, which is like somewhere up there on my shelves, and I loved that one as well. So I can't wait to read more from Alice Feeney. I think I have Sometimes I Lie on my TBR, and yes, I will definitely get to that soon. And lastly, this is a book that I read on audio, and I'm so happy to say that I gave this a 5-star, and it is The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. Now, this is my 4th book by Lisa Jewell, and I loved Then She Was Gone, which was 4.5 stars for me. Although I really like her writing, I've never given her a 5-star. But this one I have, and I'm really excited by it. This is her latest release. It's sort of similar in premise to Then She Was Gone, because at the heart of it is this really emotional mother-daughter relationship. The mother in this story is called Kim, and she is distraught because 2 years ago her daughter Tallulah went missing with her boyfriend Zach. They'd just been on a date and they were last seen at this house party in the woods. The police basically believe that they've run away because they have this young son and they're trying to run away from their responsibilities. But Kim knows that Tallulah would never do that. So the missing persons case has been called for 2 years until this woman, who's called Sophie, she's just moved into this school. She's living in like a cottage in this school grounds because her husband is now the head teacher. And she's walking in these woods where Tallulah and Zach were last seen, and she finds a sign pinned to a tree that says dig here. This book is expertly written. We are following multiple different timelines, multiple different points of view, and it all works together so seamlessly. Tallulah, we get to follow her perspective in the months leading up to her disappearance, and she's just the sweetest character I've ever read. This audiobook was just so good because the voice for Tallulah was so sweet and cute, and I was just absolutely in love with her. I was so invested in her, and I thought that Lisa Jewell, the way she writes about what happens with Tallulah in the months leading up to her disappearance, it was just so well written. It was so realistic. It was so heartbreaking to read, but I thought it was really thoughtfully written. You can tell that she put a lot of research into writing about what she writes about. I also think the character of Scarlett in this book is one of the most interesting characters I've read about in a long time. She's either really well liked or really disliked by the people around her, and I totally understood that. She is super complex, super like manipulative, but also really fascinating, and I just loved how she was portrayed. And again, I thought the voice actor on the audiobook was so good because she put on this like great posh voice for Scarlett that made her like really obnoxious but also kind of like endearing at the same time. I don't think I can fault this book at all. I loved how it all came together. I loved the ending. It all wrapped up perfectly. The characters were all really authentic, and like I said, the audiobook was so good because the voice actor just brought these characters to life so well, and yeah, oh my god, I just loved it. I can't stop raving about it, and I'm so happy that after 4 books I finally found like a 5-star book by Lisa Jewell. So yeah. And that is all the books that I read in September. Let me know if you've read any of these books before. Let me know if you liked them. Let me know if you didn't like them. Let me know if any of them are on your TBR and which one you're going to read next. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you could subscribe, that would be amazing. My October wrap-up video should be coming very soon, hopefully in the next week. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!